Roughly 1 in 10 people on this planet writes, throws, and reaches for a door handle with their left hand. That number has barely moved in centuries. Cave paintings, ancient tools, 10,000-year-old skeletal wear patterns, all of it points to the same rough figure, generation after generation. And yet left-handedness has spent most of human history being treated as something to correct, hide, or fear. Children had their left hands physically tied behind their backs in classrooms. The very word sinister comes directly from the Latin word for left. In dozens of languages across completely unrelated cultures, the word for left doubles as a word for clumsy, wrong, or unlucky. That's strange enough on its own. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Some of the newest research suggests this ancient, stubborn 10% may finally be starting to shrink. Not because of stigma, because of something far stranger, a hidden evolutionary trade that's been running quietly in the background of human history and may now be reaching its expiration date. Left-handedness has always come with real measurable costs. Studies looking at accident rates have found left-handed people are statistically more likely to be injured using tools, machinery, and everyday objects, almost all of it engineered quite literally around the right hand. Scissors, power tools, school desks, even the way a car's manual gear shift sits, all of it defaults to right-handed users. Historically, some researchers have even found evidence suggesting slightly reduced life expectancy among left-handed individuals, largely attributed to this constant low-grade friction with a right-handed world. From a pure evolutionary standpoint, a trait that makes you more accident-prone and easier to single out for social punishment should have been quietly bred out of the population a very long time ago. Natural selection isn't known for its sentimentality. So the real mystery was never why left-handedness gets stigmatized. It's why, despite every disadvantage stacked against it, the trait never disappeared in the first place. The most compelling answer comes from an unexpected place: violence. Researchers studying handedness across dozens of cultures noticed something specific. In societies with historically high rates of interpersonal violence and armed combat, left-handedness tends to occur significantly more often than the global average. In some of these populations, rates climb well above the usual 10%. The proposed reason is almost mechanical in its logic. In any physical confrontation, most people have spent their entire lives training against right-handed opponents because right-handers make up the overwhelming majority. A left-handed fighter presents an unfamiliar angle, an unexpected strike pattern, a genuine tactical surprise. That advantage shows up clearly in modern data too. Left-handed athletes are consistently overrepresented in one-on-one combat sports like boxing and fencing, precisely because their opponents get so little practice reading them. This creates a strange kind of evolutionary balancing act scientists call negative frequency-dependent selection. As long as left-handers stay rare, their unpredictability gives them a real edge in combat and historically in survival. But if left-handedness ever became common, that surprise advantage would completely evaporate because everyone would already be used to fighting left-handed opponents. The rarity itself is the entire advantage. This tension is thought to be exactly what has kept the trait locked at a small, stable percentage for thousands of years, common enough to persist, rare enough to still surprise. Here's where the story gets genuinely unsettling. If the fighting hypothesis is correct, then the advantage keeping left-handedness alive was never really about handwriting or tool use at all. It was about physical combat, and physical combat, as a routine part of daily human life, has been declining for a very long time. Modern societies increasingly resolve conflict through legal systems, institutions, and negotiation rather than direct physical confrontation. Across large-scale historical data, rates of interpersonal violence have dropped dramatically compared to earlier centuries. If left-handedness has spent thousands of years surviving specifically because it offered a combat edge, then a world with steadily less hand-to-hand conflict may be quietly removing the one force that kept the trait balanced in the population. Some researchers studying this exact pattern have proposed that as violence continues to decline globally, the evolutionary pressure sustaining left-handedness could gradually weaken too, not disappearing overnight, but potentially drifting downward across many future generations. The same slow mathematical process that once kept it stable now working in reverse. Handedness isn't controlled by one clean single gene the way something like eye color loosely is. Twin studies make this obvious almost immediately. Identical twins, who share essentially all of their DNA, still don't always share the same dominant hand. That single fact alone tells researchers that genetics only explains part of the picture. The rest appears to come from a mix of multiple genes acting together, along with random developmental factors that occur before birth, meaning handedness is shaped by both inherited code and a certain amount of biological chance. This actually strengthens the evolutionary story rather than complicating it. A trait controlled by a single dominant gene would be extremely easy for evolution to push toward extinction or fixation in one direction. A trait shaped by dozens of interacting genes plus developmental randomness is naturally resistant to being fully erased, which may be part of why, even during centuries of intense social punishment and forced right-hand training, left-handedness never actually vanished. It simply went underground, hidden behind generations of children forced to write with a hand that wasn't naturally theirs. That forced conversion history actually explains something else that initially looks confusing in the data. Older generations surveyed decades ago reported far lower rates of left-handedness than younger generations do today. For a long time, that looked like proof-handedness was becoming more common over time. It wasn't. It was proof that older generations had simply been forced to hide it more successfully. As social stigma faded through the 20th century, the reported numbers didn't reflect a rising trait. They reflected people finally being allowed to reveal a trait that had been there all along, which leaves an unusual picture. For most of human history, left-handedness survived precisely because it made certain people harder to predict in a fight. A quiet advantage hidden inside roughly 1 in every 10 people, propped up by a form of violence most of us rarely think about today. As that violence has faded from daily life, the evolutionary math that once protected the trait may be fading along with it. Not because society decided left-handedness was acceptable or unacceptable. Evolution has never particularly cared about opinions, simply because the specific advantage that kept the number stable for thousands of years may no longer exist in the same way it once did. So the next time you notice someone reaching for a door, a pen, or a coffee cup with their left hand, you're not just looking at a minor quirk of biology. You're looking at the last visible trace of a very old, very quiet advantage, one the modern world may be slowly, unintentionally erasing. This has been the Reasonary, where curiosity meets clarity.